very appreciative of all of y'all's efforts to continue maintaining the beauty of the hill country, Boerne area. Is everybody able to hear me good?
Yes.
And so you should see on my screen sharing, I've got the top part of my outline on Straight Tree Talk. I believe that this outline has been and can also be emailed to those of y'all who may not have already received it. So the first of the potpourri of tree topics is this incredible freeze that we had in 2021, February of 2021. Now the scientists would call it, defining this as a polar vortex, and they named the storm Uri. Definitely impacted a lot more people than just us here in Texas, but the severity of this freeze is arguably the worst freeze event that we've had in the last 100 years. The ISA Texas chapter had two webinars on this storm. Both of those webinars are available on the ISA Texas website for viewing. And the most experienced and knowledgeable arborists in the state of Texas kind of weighed in on, you know, their experience of storms that have happened in the past and this one. And very, very, you know, interesting. I wasn't an arborist during any of the other severe ones, but, you know, from what I gathered from them, it was just absolutely incredibly damaging storm. But storms like that, you can learn a lot about what's going to make it and what's going to survive long term. And, you know, surprise, surprise, the natives did good, right? What we saw a lot of damage on was these Arizona ash trees. Happen to be pretty common, and they got hit real hard. Huisach was one of the few natives that didn't do real well, was the Huisach tree. So a lot of the ranches I've been on this last year, the Huisach are completely dead, no root sprouts coming up. But, you know, for the most part, the natives did real good. Obviously, palms, though they're not technically trees, the palms didn't do so well. The vast majority of the ones that died were what you would call the tropical palms. So the Washingtonia would be one of the main ones there, that just almost completely died, you know, whether it's Austin, San Antonio, or anywhere in the hill country. They really, really did bad. The Texas stable palm actually did real well. You know, a lot of the fronds died, but the top of the stalk didn't, and they put out new palm fronds this year on a lot of them. Of course, that's our, you know, native palm tree. So you're going through this presentation. We're going to be covering numerous topics, and there'll be question and answer at the end, just FYI. I do a lot of oak wilt injections, and on a lot of the exposed flares of the oldest trees, I saw a lot of uh, cracking and separation of the cambial tissue from the xylem. Okay. Obviously, with the macroinfusion application to these trees, that's definitely a real challenge. But um, the intensity and depth of that freeze into that wood tissue was just absolutely remarkable. Um, Certain areas didn't get hit quite as bad, but I do make it out to uh, you know north of Gillespie, for example, Llano County, um, Mason County, northern parts of Kerr County, Bandera. There was a lot of places where the coating of ice was so substantial and the wind pressure was so substantial that thirds of trees, halves of trees, two-thirds of trees were just completely breaking off, leaving little to nothing but a trunk with a bunch of sprouts on it. Um, Incredible amount of, I guess you would call, natural wounding on these oak trees. And the portions that were left, uh, there was significant amounts of freeze cracks. So when that frozen stem started defrosting, significant cracks started forming. The outdoor temperature was probably in the 40s and 50s, during some of this time of defrost, and there were beetles active. Obviously, it being February, pruning prohibition is February through June, right, for oak wilt. Um, these wounds actually were exuding sap, drawing beetles, and this is probably the worst year I've ever seen of brand new oak wilt center starting throughout the entire hill country area, with symptomology expression a couple months after the fact, meaning that the movement of the fungal spore and the beetle infection event happened during the time directly after the freeze. And then we also had a lot of strong spring storms after this freeze, causing branches that were half ripped or cracked, and kind of bending down, uh, totally opened up brand new rips on those as well. So we had a whole bunch of natural wounds this springtime, and causing a lot of new oak wilt infections. Moving on to the topic of ball moss. I have a page on my website where I went through and addressed most of the main issues on ball moss that a lot of times aren't brought up. It's an unfortunate fact, the number of quote unquote tree people that say they're arborists, but they're not actually certified, trying to convince the landowner that this ball moss is a significant health threat to their trees, and it's killing them and they can't grow new leaves and all kinds of other stuff. I'm having to combat that too, but ball moss is an epiphyte. Okay, I have pictures of ball moss growing on fence posts. My fiance's son did a little project this year where he took ball moss and he put it on a cedar disc of wood, and he sold it to people at school. So he was kind of like being a little businessman, and I mean, the idea came from, me obviously being an arborist, and a lot of people are actually buying varieties of ball moss. There's different types of ball moss, different types of epiphytes that people will keep on their desks and spray. And it's literally a decoration and a plant that's easy to take care of. But so they're not deriving parasitic sustenance from the trees. Um, they're a minor to moderate health issue at best. Um, and so, for example, when we go out and prune, we never spec out 100% ball moss removal. My top level of pruning, we tell them we'll get out to 85% of it. It's a native plant. I believe all native things should exist in moderation. So that's our pruning approach. The ball moss creates these little seed pods that are they're kind of fly like a helicopter. They twirl around and float in the air. Okay, so you'll see when you see ball moss, you'll see it primarily on the interior of the tree where the canopy is suppressing wind pressure, and wind pressure decreases, wind speed decreases. Those seeds don't move as much, and the amount of shade and moisture underneath the tree canopy causes lichen growth to grow even more so. And the seed pods collect on the lichen kind of like Velcro. So that's why you see a whole bunch of ball moss on the interior of trees on dead branches, and it has absolutely 0% result of branch dead because of ball moss. It's the other way around. The branch is dead, and the ball moss is a better environment for it to survive in. So that's why you find a lot of it there. If you got an infestation of ball moss and your tree canopy is real thin, it's very likely there's something else affecting the tree so that it has a poor canopy. A lot of times it happens to be damage from some sort of trenching or construction or grading that occurred. And that's what's causing the tree not to do well and then not have a lot of leaves. And then the ball moss is able to blow through and filter better through the tree and start collecting more out at the tip ends. And the new growth isn't as long, so it doesn't outgrow the ball moss quite as quick. But it's not due to the ball moss, it's due to other factors. And then the ball moss gets the basically, thrown under the wagon on that one, and it's the scapegoat. Now, ball moss can collect a lot of freezing rain. Okay, so it is a good idea to remove some of it. That's why we do somewhere around a 65% to 85% removal of ball moss when we prune. It's to get out that excessive surface area for freezing rain to collect on, adding weight to the branch, weight that it could be that extra 100 pounds of frozen ball moss that causes the branch to break as opposed to not break. So, things like that, it's a good idea to get some of it out. Aesthetically, most people would agree that less ball moss looks better. That's real subjective. So, yeah, qualified in most cases, yes, but again, you want to, what's the actual science and health based versus, what somebody has an expectation that, hey, my tree look better without all of it. I know a lot of people that think their tree would look better with all the green stripped out to the tip ends. Well, in the arborist industry, we call that lion's tailing. When you strip a tree out like that, you're removing food production. When you remove food production from a tree, you're causing the tree to basically starve. It's like telling a tree, hey, I'm going to go ahead and cut your diet and caloric intake by 50% and see how your health is. Obviously that would impact us. We need a certain amount of calories for our body size and exercise we do and everything. Well, these trees know what they need too. So removing green off of a tree is predominantly what getting done to get all the ball moss out too. So instead of hand picking the ball moss off the green branch, they're just cutting the branch off to get the ball moss out of the tree. Major problem with, I would say 80 to 90% of all tree companies out there completely have no idea of biology and tree pruning when they're doing what they do. So I have the link to this article in the outline. Questions on call making insects. So there's actually tons of different types of galls and insects that make them, and this is a fantastic resource. So you'll notice on my my outline that I've got a couple of TAMU AgriLife resources on it, and the AgriLife is just a fantastic place to get your questions answered. Okay, so whether it's the Texas Forest Service or AgriLife agency, lot of good information there, and I just want to encourage y'all to become more familiar with all the different resources that they have. So when you have questions, you can look into this. There's just a whole bunch on the next topic, probably somewhere around 7 to 10 different articles that they've written in various places and years, and you can get a little bit of new thing out of each one of them. So, but yeah, go into this gall making insects. Predominantly, people are seeing the leaf galls and the twig galls on oak trees, and that's it's predominantly what people are curious on. What's causing that. And so you go down here to the live oak, and it's the mealy oak gall and the woolly leaf gall wasp. So there's this family of wasps, and they're basically laying their eggs either in the leaf or in the stem, and the tree is creating a unique type of wood tissue to incubate that larva, and then it comes on out and turns into an adult, and there's a symbiotic relationship where these wasps are, for the most part, are helping predate some of the tree pests. So it's mostly a symbiotic relationship. In some instances, if you have so many wasps laying so many eggs, the leaf's capability of photosynthesizing is like, you'll see the live oak leaf, and underneath there's like almost 10 to 15 little leaf galls on it. Yeah, that's going to cause some issues with photosynthesis. So it can be, out of a moderation, and then in that sense, they can be have negative health impact to the tree. Same thing with the stem galls. If there's too many of them, that'll impede vascular flow to the point where the tree may cause the tip of the stem to pass the galls to just die. I would never say either the leaf or the stem galls, even in a year where you've got it just real severe, it's still going to be in just a minor to a moderate health issue. I mean, if you've got a good collection of 10 to 20 secondary pathogens or damaging events happening to these trees, it can get to the point where maybe possibly your tree may end up dying as a result of that. But for the most part, they're just the trees are really resilient. These oaks are. Um, so there's actually, I wouldn't call them galls, but and this isn't on the outline, but there are these things called nematodes that live in the soil, and nematodes can cause severe damage to oak roots, and you'll actually see these like ballooned um, roots starting to grow up out of the ground, and they're just really deformed, and that's a result of nematodes. I don't see it very often. It's more of a kind of like an abnormality and unique. Um, but if y'all have seen something like that, that's probably what you're looking at.
Kevin, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback.
Are you clicking on the links, or are you just showing us that the links are on the outline for us to refer to?
I am on the gall making insect link. It's on my screen, and so you're not seeing it.
No. You just see your outline.
Okay. Let me how about now?
Okay, now I see the website, the link.
So again, this is the gall article by Michael Merchant, and it's Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. I'm pulling up my website article on ball moss. Do y'all see my website with the title ball moss on it now?
Yes.
Yes, we see that.
Thank you.
All right, are we back to the outline yet, or?
Not yet.
Got the outline up now?
No,
There it is.
Yes.
got it now.
It
Okay.
takes a few seconds for it to change screens.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So I'll check with you next time I'm moving each time. So D, Lepidoptera. Okay, this is going to be all forms of worms, caterpillars, etc. that you would consider a pest to trees. Potentially significant secondary pathogens. So buck moth caterpillar, those are the hairy black ones that look kind of like asps. I see those a lot with oaks. I see the eastern and forest tent caterpillars. I believe some people call them army worms. The oak rollers are kind of more the green ones, okay? And then the canker worms are kind of like the really weird, funky looking brown ones. Those are the ones I see with the oaks a whole lot. This last year we had a really intense defoliation. I had some of my customers had 2 to 3 defoliations on their oak trees. what happened was the freeze pushed the leaf production out later than usual. Okay, it coincided perfectly when there was significant quantities of these worms. Okay, and they were able to repeatedly defoliate these trees. Even so, you know, most of the trees came back real good. We had kind of a mild temperature year, you know, no record-breaking days in heat, and we had some pretty decent rain. So, you know, thank goodness after the hellacious storm, we had, you know, decent spring and summer and fall. But you know, that's kind of the story on what happened. And the Denista caterpillar, that's them little like yellow black ones that are always on your mountain laurels and chew the heck out of the new leaf growth. And I've been seeing this more and more frequently. I've been seeing a lot of the tips of ash junipers dying back. And so it's kind of concerning because you'll see it kind of all over the tree, but it's only a couple of inches of the tips of only some of the stems, but it's kind of throughout. And that's juniper budworms. The entire Lepidoptera family, okay, there are treatments for it. The AgriLife has a lot of cultural practices, such as like when you see the fall webworms, you want to clip them out early so you don't have one web family that turns into 5 web families. You know, if you get them out physically soon, you're not going to have the you know, snowball down the hill effect type of thing. The organic kind of approach to treatments, the best 2 companies that I know of are Fertilome and Greenlight. They make a lot of good products. When I do treatments that are almost always systemic. By that I mean I'm using a very strong chemical that goes in the soil that the tree uptakes, that's only going to harm the bugs that are going to be causing tree damage. I try to stay away from topical stuff. The organic will have, it helps, but it doesn't have a lot of power. So like commercially, I'd have a bunch of unhappy customers if only use organics. But you know, there are ways to do it right and use strong chemicals. I can tell you that those chemicals are not the chemicals that most people use. Most of the people in my industry are going to use the more powerful, non-target specific approaches because those products, they cost less. So, you know, the old adage is true. You get what you pay for. But the highest quality ones, the ones that are made with the, you know, and this is especially important to y'all, is the bees, and making sure that you've got bee-friendly products. They are out there. There's ones that won't harm them, and take them into account, but they tend to cost more money and require a professional application. I'm going to go to this website that has a picture of these stinging caterpillars. Are y'all seeing the stinging caterpillars entomology update?
Yes.
Yeah, we're seeing it, Kevin.
So this is a really, the pictures are excellent pictures. And I mean, I guess you could say these things are kind of cute. They eat a lot of leaves, okay? I'll tell you that. They'll eat a lot of leaves, but when you spend a lot of time treating for worms and doing oak wilt treatments and being outside in extremely close proximity to these guys, I can tell you they sting and it hurts really bad. And I would just encourage you to kind of be familiar with these, just like you would be familiar with poison ivy or poison oak. And, you know, keep a watchful distance from them. So oak wilt, what you didn't know. My website on oak wilt is the most comprehensive collection and commentary by an oak wilt practitioner in the entire United States. I've spent an extremely large amount of money and time putting that together. I believe that knowledge is the key to getting better results when managing a catastrophic disease like this. I believe that with the right information, good people like yourselves can really make a substantial impact. So one of my concerns has been to try to push forward more and more progress in this particular disease so we could get better results. So that's the common theme through my website. And so one of the places that we don't know much about this here in Texas, but the other states with oak wilt know a lot about it. And that's going to be DNA diagnostics. Okay. Here in Texas, we have a great lab in the Texas Plant Clinic, which is part of the A&M University system. And what they do is the culturing method. So you take wood tissue, you put it in a igloo with blue ice in it, and then you ship it overnight to their clinic. They take that wood tissue and then they use a agar solution of, you know, basically potato sugars, and they try to grow the fungus out of that wood. Okay. And that's what's called the traditional method. So you should be seeing my oak wilt diagnostics dilemma page right now. Thumb up, anyone?
Yes, it's up.
Okay. There's a whole lot of information on this page, like all the other 12 pages on oak wilt that I have on my website. At the very top, that starts it all out, is a U.S. Forest Service publication. It talks about comparing and contrasting the DNA-based method of oak wilt diagnosis and the traditional culturing, which is the Texas Plant Clinic. Okay. They found that they got similar results in the red oak family with both. But in the DNA-based method, they were able to isolate oak wilt in small branches and in dead branches from bur and white oak trees, and they were unable to detect the fungus in the white oaks. So one of the most critical things we learned from this study is that the white oak species, specifically the bur and the macrocarpa and the alba, which is the ones they tested, we know for a fact that those particular white oak species do not do well through a traditional method. So you can test them and they come back negative and you think, oh, it doesn't have oak wilt. But the fact is it does. And the problem is the limitation of the culture testing method to isolate it. Okay. I believe we'll have the same problem with chinkapin oak and lacy oak and all of our white oak species. So if you take cuttings and send them to the AgriLife lab, you could be getting back a bunch of false positives. So there is a lab in Allen, Texas, and it's called Research Associates Laboratory. And I literally, when I go take samples, say I have a lacy oak with oak wilt that I believe has got oak wilt, I can cut those samples, put them in a Ziploc bag, stick them in a FedEx overnight mailer. They will send me the results the next day by 5 p.m. The AgriLife lab, it will take you anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks to get results back. So from a standpoint of diagnosis to prognosis, and if you got a serious issue, that is extremely helpful to have that. And I can even come to a tree that died 3 months ago, 9 months ago, take cuttings off of it and ask them to find out what pathogen that likely killed it. That's absolutely incredible. The culture method, you have to have live tissue. You can't grow fungus from dead tissue. So the implications of DNA and what it can do is it's just huge, and it's growing really rapidly. I do believe the AgriLife is going to hire a DNA expert. The Texas A&M University system, they're probably going to hire a DNA expert, and they're going to have one of the best DNA pathology labs in the nation. That's what I believe is going to happen. I can't say that for certain, but I'm pretty certain they are. They know that they need to do this to benefit the agricultural community. But for the time being, we've got this RAL, and it's an excellent company. Fungal mat. So this is the newest page that I put out, okay? The amount of overland spread that I see is very, very significant, okay? Back in 2011, I was involved in Fair Oaks. Oak Wilt Center survey, where I found like 11 oak wilt centers back in that time frame. Okay. In 2021, that number of oak wilt centers in Fair Oaks had literally doubled. In 10 years, they doubled their oak wilt centers. So that obviously is a result of the spread of oak wilt via beetles. You should have my oak wilt fungal mat page up. Y'all seeing this?
No.
We're on research. There's the fungal mat.
Y'all got it up now?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the picture on the left is just so you can literally see the size that these fungal mats can get. That entire blackened stain was a fungal mat that was active probably 6 to 9 months prior to me putting my hand on it. So it's an old stain, but that entire thing is a fungal mat. The picture on the right is about a 17, 18-inch red oak tree trunk. Every black spot that you see on it, which is, you're seeing maybe 35 to 40% of one side of it, okay? There's over 20 fungal mats just on that one section, and that's about 7.5 feet, okay? The tree is about 45 feet tall, and there are fungal mats all the way up that thing, meaning these trees, these red oaks that get oak wilt, they can form 100 plus fungal mats on one tree, and that's just a massive source of inoculum, okay? We have pictures here. You should be able to see the immature, mature, aging, declining. So I wanted you to be able to see fungal mats in different stages of their like development. These are all my pictures, by the way. These aren't ones that I stole from the U.S. Forest Service because I don't chop trees to find fungal mats. I find fungal mats on a regular basis. It is not hard for me to find fungal mats. You show me an oak wilt center with red oaks in it, I will find you fungal mats, guaranteed. So being that there's so much source of inoculum, and being that we paint all year long because fungal mats are present all year long, we've got an issue with overland spread, and we need to be more serious about this, okay? By more serious, I want to point out that in 1992 National Oak Wilt Symposium that was here in Austin, Texas, on page 139 of that couple 100-page document, the Forest Service removed 1,190 diseased red oaks, okay? 4 years, that was from 1988 to 1992. In 4 years, they did 1,190. Via public information or open records requests, I pulled the data on 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. The Forest Service, for their cost share removal of red oak, did a total of 10. Okay, so that number is significantly lower than the other one. I think we need to get the number closer to the first 4 years. There's a whole lot of reasons for this. I don't have enough time to get into all of that and what's going on and whatnot. But what I do want to get across is that fungal mats happen on a regular basis, and we can do something about it. On my management page, I have 21 points for how we can improve the oak wilt suppression program with the Forest Service. But I think it's likely one of the things is just education. So I would suspect most all of y'all are familiar with trenching, and that the Forest Service has cost share funds for trenching. But what you probably aren't aware of is the Forest Service will provide money to remove infected red oaks prior to the formation of fungal mats. And so that's what these 10 trees were in the last 4 years. They provided taxpayers money to compensate them for those removal costs. But they've got the budget set at a 6% of the oak wilt suppression money is for that. But they only provide money for two things: trenching and red oak, infected red oak removal. So I believe that the trenching allocation and the infected red oak removal allocation should be exactly proportionate. Lower on this page, I've got examples of porcupine chewing, ear rubs. I've got trees that were literally cribbed and darn near killed by either cattle and or horses. These are all examples of natural wounding. So what I'm trying to get at is this painting. We're only going to paint what we cut, right? But we're not going to paint all these natural wounds. So the only way to mitigate the natural wound problem is to get rid of the source of the inoculum, which is the problem for pruning and wounding. So it's kind of saying, well, what's the primary concern? Is it the wound, or is it the beetle, or is it actually the inoculum, which is what's infectious to begin with? Lower on, I've got pictures of mats in the winter, pictures of mats in the springtime, mats in the summer month. Most of these pictures of summer fungal mats were after July, i.e. meaning these brand new immature ones that you see right here, those are forming in July when they say it's safe to prune. That's not good. That is definitely not safe. Bunch of fall fungal mats. The document here on oak wilt inocula is very, very enlightening. What I found is that the research done by these northern states with oak wilt, there's more studies, and that these studies are more advanced than what we have down here in Texas. And this information isn't making it down here. And so I have taken their information and put it on my website, because I think science, regardless if it comes from the University of Minnesota or Wisconsin or Texas A&M, science is science, and all science is welcome and helpful. Overland containment. So in the northeastern states, okay, we have the oak wilt suppression program up there too, right? So here in Texas, we have an oak wilt suppression program. Well, the eastern region has an oak wilt suppression program too. This is a USDA, U.S. Forest Service document. In this document, they have, these are the states that belong to this eastern region, okay? All these states receive cost share funding for oak wilt as well. And down here in this graph, they have a list of all the things that they provide funding for. So the first group is trenching, vibratory plows, trenchers, bulldozers, etc. Okay, this is the interesting section. They have stump treatment with herbicides. The yes, cost share eligible practice, yes. Girdle and herbicide treat a buffer zone of trees, yes. Cut and herbicide treat stumps of a buffer zone of trees, cost share eligible practice, yes. The northern states have been using herbicide for quite some time as a tool in their oak wilt suppression program. And I think that's a really interesting consideration for us to look at doing down here. So for the past 4 years or so, I have been doing pasture improvement projects and gathering data on how to effectively, with a trench, without a trench, use herbicide to help improve our containment of oak wilt. In Wisconsin, they just finished a 5-year study of 50 oak wilt centers where they used herbicide only to stop oak wilt. Okay, that's about to get published, and it's going to be very, very influential in practice. And I'm hoping here in the next year or two, the Texas Forest Service is going to sponsor a National Oak Wilt Symposium for the third time in Austin, Texas, where these people who did all these studies come down here and tell us about their studies. And we look at how we can integrate this knowledge and get more effective results here in Texas. My Oak Wilt management page on my website, you're going to see a section in the menu at the top where you can just click on herbicide, and you'll have a link to all the studies in different states that have been using herbicide and oak wilt suppression. I'm going to move on to the last topic, okay, and this is going to be the native trees, you know, being even more important than they've ever been. The emerald ash borer is in Dallas, and my suspicion is probably in the next 10 to 15 years, Boerne, San Antonio will be at a point where that particular borer is going to be having a significant impact on what Arizona ash trees we have left. Okay. No one knows for certain whether our Texas ash have any sort of resistance to this borer. I would not place a bet on that. I think it's highly probable the Texas ash will suffer greatly, which means if it does get into those areas where we have significant stands, like there's a whole bunch of them in the Blanco area. There's a bunch of them near Lost Maple State Park and, you know, Medina, Tarpley, all that area. We could have a severe loss of those trees. Many of them are on rural, raw properties. There won't be treatment. And the only way to suppress the emerald ash borer is to treat that tree at least every other year. Okay, that is extensive amounts of money investing in keeping a tree alive. So at that point, it's going to be only a handful of trees that are most valuable around somebody's house where they're going to be treating them. So it becomes more and more critical for us to look at what other trees are out there that are being underused right now. And two of the ones on y'all's recommended tree list that I believe are two of the best candidates out there is going to be the bodart tree, and it's going to be the honey locust. Okay, those two will grow anywhere in the state. So statewide, they'll do well. And currently, there's no singular primary pathogen that could inflict like catastrophic losses of those trees. I'm not saying they're bulletproof, but we need to try to get away from too many of the species that are prone to severe losses by primary pathogens or pests, i.e. ash trees of any kind and oak trees of any kind. Okay. To kind of underline how important it is for us to try to get more diversity out there, the newest page put up by the Texas A&M Forest Service for assistance to landowners with tree health questions is called Tree MD. It's an excellent resource.
Preempting.
I'm gonna see if this, hopefully this should pull up when I click this button. Are you guys seeing tree MD right now?
Not yet.
Now?
No. It says oak wilt.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Oh,
it.
that's
That's
it.
the one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is tree MD, and this is the oak wilt section.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna blow this up here. The last sentence. However, those white oaks, such as the shin oak, chinkapin oak, and lacy oak, that grow in stands with interconnected root systems, also may die in large numbers from oak wilt. I want to underline that word also. Also is referring back to the red oaks and live oaks that are most commonly killed by oak wilt. Okay? So previously, before November of 2019, when I had a conversation and they changed their website, okay, I had a conversation with them. They had said that these white oaks were resistant to oak wilt, that they rarely died, direct quote, rarely died, and showed little noticeable impact. Okay? That's what they thought would happen to them. Okay? And that's why they called them resistant. Okay? The chinkapin oak and the lacy oak both are Texas superstar trees. So this is from the Texas Department of Agriculture, the Texas AgriLife, the Texas Nursery and Landscape Association. They all ran with that back in the early 2000s, but they had never done any inoculative studies of those trees to see what would happen to them if they got oak wilt. So unfortunately, science wasn't done. Assumptions were made. And now in November of 2019, I had a chit chat with them, and the Forest Service, the leader, he straight up told me, he's like, we need to look at this and take this seriously. And they made adjustments. And what they just say here is right. So I see chinkapins and lacies and shin oaks dying just like live oaks. Okay. Vast majority of them will completely die. They drop like dominoes, and I see it all the time, and I work on ranches in 10 different counties on a regular basis in the hill country. Okay. What I want to draw your attention to next here is this. The red oaks and live oaks are most commonly killed by oak wilt when compared to white oaks, i.e. post oak, bur oak, Mexican white oak. Now, they don't say they rarely die. Okay, they say they are less commonly killed. Okay, so they have significantly softened that. They had said that the post, bur, and Mexican white oak were very resistant. Direct quote, very resistant. Okay, now they're saying they die less commonly than a live oak. Okay, so follow me. If a live oak dies at 85% rate of mortality, 85 out of 100 of them die, which we all know is about right. If you have 60 out of 100 die, that's less commonly killed, but that's still mostly killed. Do you follow? So what do we mean when we say they are less commonly killed? What do we mean when they say they are more resistant? That specific needs to be addressed in an inoculative study. But I can tell you, post oaks, bur oaks, and Mexican white oaks, in my experience, 60 to 80% of them are going to die when they get oak wilt. And that's assuming they don't get treated. Now, I treat all of them, and the treatment's extremely effective, as is treatment on live oaks. But the point of the matter is many of us have invested significant quantities of money on these white oak species because we believe that they were resistant, but I don't think we really knew what that actually meant, or it was being defined accurately as it needed to be. So diversification means we need to plant fewer ash trees. I'm not opposed to planting oaks or ash trees. I am opposed to when you've got half of your trees on your property are native oaks, and then the majority of your new trees that you plant on your property are oaks too. That doesn't make sense. Diversity makes sense. So we need to take a list of recommended trees on y'all's website, and work more and more to try to encourage people to see how many options there are instead of getting into this growth pattern, which I see in the nursery where they've got 20 species and they don't want more diversity. They're just going to grow the same 20 staple trees at every single nursery across the state, i.e. very little diversity, not a lot of choices. And that's a very unfortunate thing, but we hopefully can, try to make some influences on people with better information. And I would suggest y'all look into maybe updating your information on this chinkapin and lacy oak at the very least on quote unquote being oak wilt resistant. So question and answer time. It looks like I didn't leave a lot of time for that. I apologize.
We did have a lot of questions in the chat box, and so I'll just start reading them to you. What do we do with limbs that have been freeze cracked?
Well, at this point, it's too late to do anything about it. So, when it happens, like if we have a severe freeze this year, going out there and painting that is so cumbersome. You won't be able to see them all. What I need to get across in this message is the importance of finding the red oaks with the fungal mats. Painting every natural wound is an impossible task. Don't tackle the impossible, tackle the possible. There's not a lot of red oaks getting oak wilt and forming fungal mats within, a couple blocks of your house. But those are the trees that need to be addressed if there's an oak wilt.
Kevin, it's not just specific to oak trees. If you have freeze damage and cracks, say in a mountain laurel, what do you do?
Oh, gotcha. I mean, a lot of times those cracks are going to be on smaller stems, and you're just going to prune the dead wood off of it. In general, trees are real resilient, and they're going to come back. If it's on a massive stem, you may need to do some what we call bark tracing. Maybe you need to actually put some rods in the branch to hold it together. It might still have vascular flow, but not structural integrity. So,
okay, so
call an arborist and have them go to your house. Check that out.
Okay, the next one was about ball moss. What happens to oak leaves that become blanketed by ball moss?
So very likely the reason why the oak leaves are getting covered by the ball moss is a result of some other severe health and damage to the tree, and not because of the ball moss. So what you need to do is find out what's really truly ailing the tree and fix that. And then in the meantime, you can also remove the ball moss. But I want to underline the fact that it's not the ball moss that's causing the leaves that get covered. It's the tree not growing much because it's in poor health. It's causing what would appear to be the ball moss harming the tree.
Okay, and the next thing was a comment about your section on the caterpillars. And Wiltshaw says he didn't think any of the caterpillars listed caused permanent damage to trees, that the trees for the most part can recover.
So they would be considered a secondary causal agent of death. So if you have multiple defoliations after a severe freeze, and if we had had a drought this summer, yeah, I can guarantee you that multiple defoliation would have been a significant contributor to the mortality of that tree. We were very, very lucky, blessed this summer that we had lower temperatures and we had good soil moisture from rain this last year. But they do cause significant damage. I mean, think about it. If you hired somebody to prune your tree and they strip all the leaves out of your tree, you'd probably fire them, write a really bad review, and be worried about the tree. So, you know, if these worms do it 3 times, they're causing severe damage to the tree, definitely.
Okay, so this refers to the picture you had of your hand on the oak fungal mat. Is oak wilt still active in the dead red oak with your hand on it?
No, those spores are only viable for a few weeks.
Okay, and then do we have too many oaks? And I think you alluded to that when you said we don't have enough diversity.
Do we have too many oaks?
Yeah, do we have too many oaks?
So I come from a conservation rangeland that my bias is that Texas should look more like Texas used to before man messed it all up. Or I guess European man. We used to have less oaks. The mott's were scattered. We had more grassland. Obviously, fires were a major contributor to that. Bison grazing, all that stuff. We have too many oaks. And then we have people, when they come in, they cut down everything because they don't know what it is. And they think the only valuable tree on the property is the oak. And they're cutting everything down. I've seen people cutting down perfectly good black walnuts because they're like, well, they don't live very long and they have a tendency to rot and big branches break out of them. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So those kind of practices, yeah, we have way too many oaks as a result of all those things. And we need to plant more diversity. And I am for actually selective elimination of oaks on ranches, just like we would selectively eliminate ash juniper.
Okay, don't we paint just to mask the odor of sap from the beetle?
I believe the primary benefit of the paint is going to be turning the beetle away because of the smell. Okay, the beetle is attracted to sap not at all by sight. It's attracted only by the smell of the sap.
Okay.
The paint repels the beetle.
Okay.
In the event that, you know, a covering as well may also be needed in case you've got a crazy beetle that doesn't get repelled by the smell. A light dusting isn't going to work. So when I recommend painting, I'm recommending not just spraying paint, you know, kind of near the wound or like, you know, a light covering. I would paint it thoroughly. And then that would be a physical barrier as well. Because a light dusting, the sap will continue to flow and that paint smell will wear off as well. So you need to have a good covering when you paint.
Okay.
And it needs to be oil-based. They say any paint works, any paint doesn't work. You put a water-based paint and the sap will bleed out of the wound and take the paint with it. Promise. Latex only.
Oil-based only.
Yes, oil-based, latex, use those synonymously.
Okay. Is identification of oak wilt infestation prior to forming fungal mats done by DNA testing?
DNA testing can isolate the fungus in any oak tissue that is infected. So my dream is that the Forest Service engages in a new campaign that says we've talked about paint and now we're going to move on to the reason why we paint. And then they go out and train people how to look for red oaks that are getting oak wilt and that need to be removed before the fungal mats form, okay? These red oaks getting oak wilt are inside known oak wilt centers, okay? So like Boerne, for example, I've created a map. Boerne's got about 20 oak wilt centers, okay? If you monitor where there's oak wilt in Boerne and you say, hey, these people have oak wilt and they've got red oaks, we know those red oaks potentially could get it through root grafts. So we're going to let the customer know or homeowner know that if they see their tree dying, that's a red oak, call the city. We're going to have this tree tested, DNA, culture, whatever, just have it tested. And if it comes back with oak wilt, then the city and the Forest Service are going to assist that homeowner in removing it because it's a threat, nuisance tree to the entire community. Okay, that's my little dream, but no city's doing this at the moment. And the Forest Service does not have a recommendation to cities to engage in this. And that needs to change.
Okay. What do you mean by using herbicide to treat oak wilt?
The northern states and what I've been doing is I am treating unwanted trees around the oak wilt center. So the trees that don't have oak wilt yet, that are assumed to be grafted to the ones that do have it. You kill the trees around the oak wilt. The herbicide kills the root system. The fungus can't survive in dead wood tissue and move in wood tissue that's dead, okay? And therefore, you're going to basically, it's like burning out a fire. So if you got firefighters and they've got a fire, they'll burn ahead of the fire, right? And then that will put out and the fire won't have any fuel left, and the fire will die. Does that make sense? It's like almost a perfect analogy between firefighting and oak wilt fighting.
Yeah. So is your,
Yeah, you got to kill trees to stop it. You got to kill healthy trees to stop it, period.
is your herbicide treatment by injection?
I've kind of created a brand new proprietary practice that some people might argue is a little more labor intensive than most practices. But I'm injecting, I'm drilling holes in the tree and I'm basically injecting the solution into those holes. Okay. I'm only killing the species intended for kill. So cedar elms, black walnuts that are growing in the same stand of oak trees I'm treating to kill, they don't get hurt. The herbicide only stays in the plant tissue I select.
Okay. How long after a tree is dead is it possible to still transfer oak wilt by using the wood for firewood or other use?
Live oaks are never contaminated, ever. So live oaks, it doesn't matter, live, dead. You can take a brand new live oak that's in dying of oak wilt and it's still got sap coming out of it. You can cut it up for firewood and move it anywhere you want to. It don't matter. It's going to be the blackjack oak. It's going to be the Spanish red oak, the Texas red oak, the shimmered red oak, whatever's in the red oak family. So, East Texas got different red oaks like the water oak and the pin oak, but those are the ones that form the fungal mats. And bur oaks form fungal mats. Only the spore producing oaks that you need to worry about. I would discourage ever using red oaks for firewood unless it's like on your property and you've got oak wilt, and obviously at that point it doesn't make much difference. But so for example, I would never sell red oak firewood to anyone. I just won't do it. When I sell firewood, I sell live oak firewood, period. I
Okay.
believe it's possible post oaks may form fungal mats. Okay, so y'all stay tuned, and I'm gonna start looking for fungal mats growing on post oaks. But they proved up in the northern states that they grow on bur oaks and they grow on Quercus alba. So saying down here that it only grows on red oak species is 100% scientifically inaccurate.
Do you think the high storm fatality of the Arizona ash you mentioned at the start is related to the borers?
Well, the primary catalyst of their mortality is going to be the Uri storm. Okay, that damage was so severe, it weakened the trees so much their immune system is now prone to all kinds of stuff. So think about like our bodies when we have a real weak immune system, little tiny things like a flu, which would maybe we'd skip a couple of days of not feeling good, but then that flu, when you're extremely in a weakened state, that flu could be life threatening. Okay, so that's what's happening to them. So the borers are going to, basically my prediction is the borers are going to slowly over the next 5-8 years, most of these Arizona ash are going to be dying anyways. So, hopefully that's kind of a good thing in the sense that the emerald ash borer won't have a whole lot of trees to be able to create a bunch of progeny.
Okay, the next one is about, are there beetles and fungus that you could stick on Chinese tallow ligustrum and andina?
Well, I mean, I think there are labs out there that are creating pathogens. I think that's happening. So if you're asking me whether or not we could create like a Chinese tallow pathogen that'll just wipe them out like oak wilt, and then we'll, like cheer and clap. I mean, it's possible. Yeah,
Okay.
I wish I could snap my fingers and make all the Chinese tallow and Chinese this and that die and our oaks not get oak wilt any longer.
If white oaks listed are singular, do they stand a better chance of surviving oak wilt?
They stand a better chance of surviving oak wilt if they're treated. Okay. When I monitor these Mexican white oaks, and I'm saying that about six out of 8 of 10 will die, the 2 to 4 of those, the 20 to 40% that don't die, the survivor ratio, they're going to die to about 40% canopy loss to 60% canopy loss over about 3 years. So what you're getting is, maybe a third of a tree or 2/3 of a tree. Most of the homeowners are just going to cut them down, right? Because that tree's never going to get to a full glorious state. So in essence, the oak wilt, though it hasn't fully killed the tree, it's killed what the homeowner wanted that tree to accomplish, and they're just going to start over again. But if you treat them promptly, you can keep the tree alive, and usually one single treatment is enough.
Okay.
Wilt, are you saying that, are you asking if a tree like a red oak or a white oak is planted by itself Is that what you mean by singular? That
Uh,
they stand a
I'm
better
talking-
chance of
he,
surviving?
he had listed white oaks, Chinquapin, Lacey, Monterey, and talked about them being in months, I guess.
Yeah,
But if they're a singular tree, a solo tree standing alone, a standalone tree, I would think it would have more chance of surviving or of avoiding the oak wilt fungus.
so
Yeah,
it's
so
not,
if you take a red oak and you plant it out in the middle of a field where there's no oak trees within a half mile, just theoretically, right? That
right,
red oak stands a real good chance of not getting oak wilt. Okay, but if you're planting any oak tree, bur oak, red oak, live oak, it doesn't matter. If you're planting that tree near native established oak trees, so for example, when you dig the hole to plant the tree, you see roots in the soil that you dug up. If those roots are oak roots, you're gonna see grafting. Grafting is a regular common occurrence. It's not an uncommon occurrence. So whatever you've seen on that, I'm telling you, it's not true. I'm normally seeing transfer of oak wilt from the native established trees to these planted oaks, whatever species, within 5 to 12 years.
So you're going to see
They will graft. They
you're
will
going to see
graft.
root grafting between Chinquapin and live oak.
roots.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, so Wilt had another question. Does your treatment occur after the tree has oak wilt?
No.
In almost every occasion, I am therapeutically treating white oaks because from the time they contract the disease to the time that most often it's existing oak wilt center. Okay, so I've got a customer, I'm treating their live oaks. They've got a planted mature Mexican white oak, say in their yard. I tell them, you notice anything on this tree, you give me a call. They give me a call when like one branch starts defoliating, right? I go there, I treat it. Extremely effective. So in most cases, I'm doing it after the fact. My biggest customer, I've got a 1,500 acre ranch where for 6 years I've treated 3,331 trees on his property one time with an over 90% success rate of keeping the oak trees alive, okay? When I have a stand of 15 or 20 shin oak that are good sized diameters, right? Like 5 to 15 inches in diameter, I know they're all connected. I wait for one of them to get symptoms in that lot, and then I treat the whole lot. So one out of the 20 trees is going to be sick, and the other 19 are going to be probably prophylactic. Okay, and that one's going to be a therapeutic, and I have extremely high rates of success. But in a mott situation like that, yeah, I know it's at that point it's going to move through the white oaks just like it moves through the live oaks extremely fast. And I will, but more often than not, I'm doing therapeutics on white oak species.
Do you have, so the preventative treatment you have is your herbicide approach,
Yeah, the herbicide is kill a bunch of trees approach.
right? Okay. Do you recommend DNA?
I'm
Pardon me.
go on.
Do you recommend DNA testing a set time after treating for oak wilt?
Well, if I'm treating for oak wilt, I'm going to presume that I've come to a definitive judgment that it's there. So I don't test for oak wilt after I treat. I would test for oak wilt prior to treatment to determine whether or not I should be treating for oak wilt, or, you know, if it's a red oak that this tree's, if it's got oak wilt, then it needs to be removed for, you know, cultural practices and keeping the oak wilt mats from forming.
So who can apply for oak wilt
Oops.
infected red oak removal funds?
people that believe that they have a red oak infected with oak wilt, basically you call your Texas Forest Service agent. Okay. One of my customers did this. She called Erin Davis over there in Kerrville. Erin covers our Kendall County, here in Boerne. All right. She called her, said, Kevin came out here, says, I got a red oak dying of oak wilt. Erin goes out there and says, yep, you sure do. Erin called her boss and said, I need to apply for a red oak removal cost share application for this lady. And they set her all up with it and got her paid back when she had the tree removed properly.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Well, sorry, Teresa. Can I just jump back to that first question? Hi, Kevin. We met a couple of years ago. You came out and we walked the property here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you know, the county very kindly introduced oak wilt right through here. So I've been treating a lot of trees. Obviously, you know my property. I couldn't treat them all. So what I did was I did some sacrificial, like you had suggested, but I kind of did it reverse wise in that I treated some trees and not the others. So that, you know, if I had a lot with 30 trees, maybe I got in and I injected, you know, 15 of them, and I had to let the others go because you can't keep up with the speed it's moving, and you know, unless you've got thousands or hundreds of injectors.
Right.
But what I'm worried about is some of my really big live oaks that I injected as preventative. Is there any benefit now, because I've injected them over a year ago and they look healthy, but I don't want to be complacent? Would it be worthwhile then a certain time to go back and test it? You know, how long does that fungicide stay active in the tree?
So are you seeing movement in symptom expression from where the oak wilt was to the other side of said big tree on other trees that you didn't treat?
On some of the trees I'm thinking of, I can't tell because there's a property line, so it's you know, so I can't see into their property.
Okay.
But obviously there's spread because none of the other neighbors are treating their trees at all. So you know, there's loads of trees getting lost down here.
On really high value trees, and if you're not absolutely certain that you treated the tree at the right time, I'm going to encourage you to consider investing more money in retreating that tree. Okay.
Okay.
What I'm doing on this big huge ranch, I'll treat the big tree, and then I'm going to look for signs of oak wilt that had moved through that big tree to the next tree.
Mm-hmm.
And if the big tree still looks good, I know it's been challenged by the disease. I know my injection held. I did it at the right time, and no, I don't go back and treat it.
Okay.
But
All right.
it's
Yeah.
hard
I mean,
to know how to do that perfectly unless you've been doing this day in, day out for like 10 years, and then, you know.
oh yeah. I mean, I'm just doing the best I can do because you know how many trees I had. There's no way. You know, I'm not a professional rancher or, you know, timber place. I'm just trying to save as many as I can.
okay,
I
the
would probably
last
do it again. Dr. Apple says three times.
Okay.
the last comments and question are by Don Frazier, and I'm going to let him ask them for himself.
Okay.
Don, are you there?
You may have to unmute.
Okay, well, I'll start asking. He says he's got live oak infected tree. If you cut the tree, it will stimulate root growth. Could this infect neighboring trees via the roots that are infected?
So this live oak is infected with oak wilt?
Okay, I finally got it unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we live on 48 acres, and we had 18 trees, large oaks, professionally treated. So I've done a lot of preventive treatment of another 40 trees, just to make sure, I've got some sort of barrier. And hopefully this spring, they'll be fine. But one of the things that I have questions about is that with the live oaks, a lot of that infection is spread through the root system, or at least all of it probably. And if you have a tree that's infected with the live, like the red oaks will die faster, but with the live oaks, it can take a longer time period. And one of the things that I was told was wait several years before you even think about cutting them down. And maybe even the bark is falling off it, because otherwise you could have some additional spread, because cutting down a tree before it's dead can stimulate branch growth and probably root system growth as well.
Okay, so a couple of things. First off, the treatment, professional treatment with a fungicide.
Well, I'm using propiconazole.
Yeah, that treatment that you did is not a barrier, okay? So what it's going to do is it may save the above ground tree, but it will not stop the movement.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
That's number one.
So
Okay.
if a live oak is cut down prior to the tree's actual death, will cutting the tree for firewood stimulate additional root growth of infected roots?
Whether you cut the tree down or you do nothing with it, the existing root grafts will still move the fungus, period. Okay?
Right.
Do nothing, cut it down, prune it, whatever you do or don't do to that tree is not going to change the fact whether it's going to move or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you cut down a live oak tree that has oak wilt that isn't completely dead, it may cause the fungus to move through the already existing root grafts at a faster rate of speed. I've seen 10 to 30% increases in speed. It's predominantly going to be on big ranches where they wanted to get rid of the dead and dying trees, and so they bring in the bulldozer.
Right.
And instead of that oak wilt system moving 50 feet a year, it's now averaging 75 to 100 feet a year.
I've heard exactly.
What they did is they sped it up.
I've heard exactly the same thing, and that's the point that I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is that let the tree die before you start cutting it down.
Well, some people may not care whether or not the disease moves faster or slower, so they may care more about the oak wilt. So, if you got a property and you need to treat $5,000 worth of trees, whether you spend it in 3 years or 2 years, may be inconsequential to someone. So it's not necessarily always a bad thing to cut down the dying trees, but you need to be aware of what kind of management strategy you need to take if you do engage in that activity, which would mean you're going to need to treat out a little farther than you would if it was moving slower.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we've done.
Yeah, I've done the same, Don, on my property. I haven't. I've really not cut down that many trees that unless they are danger to something. But yeah. I have wherever, I've seen oak wilt just gone first through the red oaks, then the white oaks, and then coming back through the live oaks to treat them as quickly as I can, because I've only got so many injectors that I can treat with.
Yeah, if you've got live oak trees that have been infected and they're dying, and some of the branches are hanging over a house or other building, then people may be tempted to cut them down. And I think they need to be aware of what the consequences are and maybe consider, consult with an arborist and do it properly at the proper time.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I just think the problem is so extensive in this county and in Central Texas in general. And quite frankly, there's a lot of people like myself who I asked Kevin to come in and do some work with me very early on. We literally walked the property because as you can tell by my accent, I'm not a Texan. So I just wanted to know what trees I had on my property and, just have him have a professional eye walk me through so that I wasn't chopping down natives that were important. And, if he could just see anything originally. And Kevin spotted the oak wilt on the road. And, since then, it's just been a race against time to try and control it.
Well,
Kevin,
oh, go ahead.
y'all,
Yes, ma'am.
we're almost at 8:30, and this is supposed to be an hour meeting. But I think, Kevin, we have your information, and if anybody has any question, I'm sure that you would love for them to give you a call and you could meet with them.
Thank y'all so very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Kevin, you did a great job. Thank you so much. And Lorraine, thank you so much for this program tonight. And we had over 60 people participate, Kevin. So you were a big draw for us.
Wow.
So thank you very much.
That's awesome.
I hope everyone has a good evening, and y'all take care. And we'll see you next month.